It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Hockey News Big Show Stanley Cup Final Preview. I'm Katie Gaus, your host, joined by co-host Michael Traikos, and joining us today, a special guest, former Toronto Maple Leaf, longtime NHL head coach turned media personality as an NHL analyst, Bruce Boudreau. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Katie and Mike. Love chatting with you guys.
Yeah, so let's dive right into it because there's so much excitement building as we head into the Stanley Cup final. And I want to start by discussing the reason why both of these teams are once again the last two standing, second straight year. It's not an easy feat. We know how hard it is to make it to this point. So let's kick it off by talking about the defending champs, the Florida Panthers. Bruce, what stands out to you when you look at this team as their greatest strength? Why are they here year after year? And why are they on the, cusp of potentially turning into a dynasty?
Well, they certainly know what it takes to win. I think if you look at all of them, and the reason I say that, that's an easy thing to say, but I mean, when they get behind after a period, you take the recent Carolina thing, it's just like, okay, boys, we're behind, let's go, and then they turn up the heat, and I mean, it's really fun to watch this team because they finish every check. They just make it miserable for you to play till the point you go, okay, we give, and that's the way they play. But I think every one of them on this team, every guy that puts on a Florida Panther uniform knows what it takes to win. I mean, it's been pretty incredible if you look at how this team has been built a little bit and how they've changed from Reinhart coming from Buffalo to Bennett coming from Calgary, not doing much. Montour wasn't doing anything, and then he came there, and now he's not doing anything again once he leaves. And then it seems like you come and put a Florida. Look at Seth Jones. How bad was he in Chicago? And now he looks like a Norris Trophy player. I mean, it seems like you come to Florida and either it's the atmosphere or just the group feeling or just the knowledge that when you step in that room, we now have to be great, or it's Paul Maurice being able to sit there and say, hey, whatever. But you come into that uniform, that dressing room, and they don't lose. You just know we're not allowed to lose anymore. And I think that bodes so well for going into any finals or anything where you need to win.
Yeah,
I'll add to that. What you're talking about, Bruce, is an identity. And, some teams, they have an identity in the regular season and then it changes or it gets enhanced in the playoffs. Florida Panthers play this way from game one right up until the Stanley Cup final. And, to your point, I watched Oliver Ekman-Larsson all year in Toronto. And I don't remember this guy playing with an edge when he was in Vancouver. I don't remember him playing with this kind of edge when he was in Arizona. But, he got to Florida. He got playing with Tkachuk and Barkov and the rest of them, Sam Bennett. And all of a sudden, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's a pain in the butt to play against. So that identity runs throughout their entire dressing room. And I think that's why, they can add players like a Seth Jones. And all of a sudden, it's, he's playing Panther hockey. So it's really fun to watch. And, good on Bill Zito for acknowledging or, being aware of what kind of players he wanted. And getting Brad Marchand, who already had that identity, makes it so much easier.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry.
To mention too, like with what Zito's doing, I mean, he's nominated obviously to be, a GM of the year. But then you think about the guys who weren't on anybody's radar at all. You've got a Gustav Forsling picked up off of waivers. You've got a guy like Eetu Luostarinen, whose career has taken off. He led the playoffs in 5-on-5, I believe. He's dominated in that regard. But I think that speaks to your point, Bruce, because it is just, you come into this room, wherever you came from, whatever you were doing previously, you start playing Panthers hockey. And it doesn't seem like anyone does poorly when they're playing that style and they're playing that Panthers brand. But on the other side of things, let's talk about Edmonton, right? Because this is a team who certainly has kind of had ups and downs, but they fought back a lot throughout the regular season. They dealt with injuries. Seems like they're playing their very best hockey at the perfect time. The only question mark was some goaltending. But what do you think in terms of Edmonton, in terms of strengths? What is going to be the key for them to find success, especially against a very challenging Panthers opponent?
I mean, we can talk about the obvious thing here, which would be the McDavid Draisaitl thing, but I think the biggest thing is, and they were an average team, and then the playoffs came, and they too knew what they needed, and they needed Evander Kane to get healthy, and he did, and they needed Trent Frederick to get healthy. So now they got two big left wingers that fits in, that can play, that gave the forwards the balance that they needed, to where they sit there and they say, we don't. We love the fact that Connor and Leon are two of the best players on the planet, but we don't have to rely on them every time we're down a goal to win, because now we've got balance up front. And that's what they've done, is they've created balance and size up front so they can play any type of game. And they too have been to the top of the mountain, meaning last year's playoffs or last year's finals. And they know what it's like in that room, what they have to do to get there again. And I think they're even hungrier right now, because you take the first two games of the Kings series away, and I mean, not only look at their record, but look how dominant they've been against really good teams. Is what's going to make this final so fun. Like, I mean, both teams have everything going for them, and they play very similarly right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, it's funny, Bruce. Like, we're actually talking about the Oilers, and we're mentioning depth as a positive these days. Like, you look at that last game against Dallas, they finally put Jeff Skinner back in the lineup. They had Jeff Skinner just sitting on the sidelines, unable to get in the lineup. And, Victor Arvidsson's been in and out. Connor Brown's been hurt, and you haven't really missed them. Now they're without Zach Hyman. And, maybe a couple years ago, not having a guy like Hyman, you'd be going, oh boy, how do the Edmonton Oilers overcome that huge of a loss? But to your point, now you've got Evander Kane cooking. You've got Trent Frederick. You've got a Jeff Skinner who, when he does get into the lineup, he can surprise you and you can move him up and down. So, this is a deeper Oilers squad than we've ever seen. Even on the defense, not having Matthias Ekholm for most of the playoffs didn't hurt them. So, I don't see a whole lot of weaknesses now. And to Bruce's point, it's always going to be a team that's led by, 97 and Leon Draisaitl. But, to Bruce's point, you don't necessarily have to rely on them like you may have years ago.
Yeah. The best point to me is, if you take this team and 2 years ago, and it used to, well, not drive me nuts, but I used to be able to have a feeling for it as a guy that used to be a fourth line player when I did play in the NHL. But I mean, whereas they would put Connor and Leon on different lines, and then as soon as they got behind, they put them together and double shifted them. So if you're the third and fourth line guy, you go, oh, well, here we go. We can't even play anymore. We're not good enough. Let these two guys do it. And you can almost see the guys coming off the ice going, yeah, take me off, coach. I know I can't play. Let these guys do it. Now you see them playing on different lines. You don't see them making that move 12 minutes into the second period, because now we're down, and they're using their depth. And from what I gathered, and I think my numbers are right, they've had 13 different forwards score in the playoffs this year. Jeff Skinner was the last forward that was playing that hadn't scored, and he'd only played one game, and he got an assist in that game. So, their balance is the one thing that's kept them away all these years, I think, from being a great team. Now, offensively, they've got a balance. The other thing they got, very similar to it was similar to the Leafs, to Florida, to all the great teams that play with defense, is they come back. They don't float. They don't sit there and have the guys waiting at the red line for breakaway passes. They come back. Look how many shots they blocked in that Dallas series. I think they averaged over 20 blocks a game, which is imperative to win. They know how to take off when they do get the puck, because Connor's the fastest skater in the world, so they can go. But at the same time, they came back and played defense, and they realized that, hey, we got to have Stuart Skinner out a little bit here. We can't let him hang in. And when they did fall apart. He was there. He was great, and especially in that series against Dallas. So, I mean, I think they got the full package, which is going to make this series so good, I think, right now.
Yeah, there are so many things that line up about this series and make it good. I mean, you've got great depth on both sides. If the goaltending continues, you've got that for both sides. But in any team, in any series, there has to be, someone that wins and someone that loses. There has to be a weakness that's exploited in some way. Michael, you got kind of a firsthand look at Florida with the Toronto series, where they did have some successful games against the Panthers. Were there any common themes or any things that you noticed? Was it Florida doing something wrong, or Toronto did find something that maybe Edmonton is looking to exploit as well in order to have an edge over the Panthers?
It sounds simple, but getting the lead against the Panthers is going to be huge, and it's going to be crucial, because I think the Panthers, they can lock it down better than any other team in the NHL when they do have that lead, and they play that heavy brand of hockey that just makes it tough to really claw back when you're behind against them. The other thing is just, counterpunching against the Panthers. We know they love the forecheck. We know they love to really pressure the opposing D. So, that first pass is going to be crucial. And when you do turn it over on the Panthers, you really got to go. So I think that's where, if Edmonton can use its speed and really turn pucks over and go the other way, they're going to be, that's the ultimate way to kind of break down what the Panthers can do against you.
Totally agree. And the other thing that the Panthers do better than anybody else, even though I saw Edmonton do it in the last two rounds of the playoff series, is when they get you down. I mean, and I'm saying this because the Panthers had games where the differentials in goals was a lot. Okay. Yeah. And so when they get you down, they don't stop and just dump it out. They start hitting you harder and harder, and they don't finish. They finish every check. It reminds me of Gretzky. Once told me that they in the 80s they would win a lot of games like 8-2 and stuff, and teams would give up in the third period when it was 5-1 against him, and he said he'd go harder. And that's where he'd get the 2 points in the last three. People would say, "Oh yeah, meaningless points," but because he played harder in those things, instead of having a 2-point night, he'd have a 4-point night. And I look at Florida when they were beating the Leafs in games 5 and game 7. I mean, even game 7, when they knew they had it won, they kept hitting and giving you no time and space at all. And that just is like, oh my God, would they quit? Would they quit? And no, they keep coming at you. And I think that's the biggest attribute they've got. And I think Edmonton has picked a little bit of that up because they're taking time and space away. It's making it more difficult. That's why I think this is going to be such a clash.
It's funny, when the Panthers do have the lead, Bruce, they make it so that you have to start, maybe playing a little bit more high risk hockey. And I think that's really what gets you in trouble. And I saw it against Toronto, where if Craig Berube could convince the guys to stick to the process and just play it as if it's still 0-0, Toronto had a fighting chance. But there's that inclination by a player to be like, oh, we're down 2 goals. Now we got to stretch things out. Now I got to cheat a little bit. And that's where Florida really gets you.
100%. You can't cheat against them. And the Toronto series, a perfect example, is when they were down, they'd give the odd break to Nylander, who's sitting up at the other blue line, because they had to cheat to think they needed goals. Not understanding that if they did it together and they got 1, the crowd gets behind it and they get 2, but playing, and that's what they talk about, playing the right way. I mean, instead of cheating, but Florida's playing that right way all the time. And boy, do they ever love it when they've got a lead, because they still, you think that when they've got a lead, like I said, the team is, oh, let's just dump it out. And if you watch the London Knights the other day, they would just be dumping it out and waiting back at the red line for them to come. That's not Florida. They're still coming at you and forechecking, and they're playing to win even when they're winning.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to kind of that DNA that they have that's so strong, and what's being said in that room, whatever the score is, whatever period it is, however much time is left, they don't deviate, and it's what makes them truly scary. All right, well, I'm going to have you put your coach's hat on for a second here, Bruce, because we know how important matchups are in any series, and that's an area of the game the coach really has to start paying attention to. when you've got McDavid and Draisaitl on the other side of the ice, there's obviously no solution to slowing them down, truthfully. They are so incredible, especially McDavid. But when you're looking at these matchups and you're thinking about, what Florida should be kind of considering with all the different characters and all the different lines they have, what would you kind of be doing from a coaching standpoint to attempt to control the Oilers' star players?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is me, if I'm talking to the team, I'm saying we got to get the puck deep, okay? Because Florida or Edmonton lives off turnovers, and if you get the puck behind the D to where you want to get, then you can establish your forecheck. If you don't get to establish the forecheck, what you have to do is you have to play above McDavid all the time. You can't let like one pass beat all three forwards into him and let him get it, whether it's an odd man rush, whether it's a breakaway, whether it's just him going skating from blue line to blue line unimpeded. You've got to have a guy playing above him all the time. I think the perfect guy for that is Barkov. I mean, he wins the Selke, and when they don't, but the thing about good teams, and I think the way they can control them is they've got their third line is as good a defensive line in hockey. So when they're playing on the road in Edmonton, for example, you can have one of two lines against McDavid rather than just the one line where they can outmatch you. And I always used to be a believer, and wrong, of course, as a coach. But I only worried about McDavid. Draisaitl's a great player and he can beat you, but I think he can beat you with the help. On the power play, he needs McDavid can beat you by himself. So I would focus a lot on just McDavid. And if we can contain McDavid, usually you've contained most of their team. And even if Draisaitl gets 2 points, and if you've contained McDavid, usually you can end up winning 3-2 or 4-3 or something like that. But he's the key. But you forecheck like crazy. You get the pucks behind the D, but if you don't get it, somebody's always got to be above McDavid so that when he does get the puck, you can force him. I used to say this about McDavid, Patrick Kane, McKinnon, that if they give the puck away, you got to stay with them because they want it back.
Oh, yeah.
If you turn away and you give it to them, they're going to want it right back. So stay with them and don't let them get the puck back. And if you could do that and the fewer touches he gets, the better your team's going to be.
Yeah, years of covering McKinnon in Colorado, and that guy is absolutely relentless. He wants the puck back instantly. Whatever he's giving it to you for, it's just temporary because he's making a move himself. He's like, get that puck to me. And I think that's a great point because, again, you do have star players that are support players, but McDavid definitely seems like the key to focus on. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree completely with Bruce. I think if I'm Paul Maurice, I can live with the fact that McDavid's going to get his points. It's the other guys that you got to limit. So, if I'm looking at Edmonton's roster, forget about McDavid so much hurting you. Make sure that Evander Kane's not hurting you. Make sure Trent Frederick is also not hurting you, or Connor Brown. Limit the secondary offense. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has been great this playoffs. He's on that line with McDavid. I think those guys don't get enough credit for the tandem that they've been, but they're going to face a lot of Barkov and Reinhart, who was another finalist for the Selke. And I watched that Toronto series, and those two guys did a great job shutting down Matthews and Marner. And there's nothing to suggest that they can't do the same kind of work against McDavid. He's going to get his points, but just make sure that the other guys aren't also just taking getting their offensive ability as well.
Hey, what did Buffalo get for Reinhart?
Not enough.
Not enough.
Kevin Levi and the
50 plus.
Yeah.
A 50-plus goal scorer that is up for the Selke. I don't know. And I gave him away.
He's such a smart player, too.
Yes.
He seems like the kind of guy, Bruce, that coaches just love because he thinks the game real well and he can score. He can kill penalties. I don't know what Barkov or Reinhart doesn't do aside from he's not the fleetest of foot, but even so, when you've got that hockey IQ, he seems to find a place. He knows where to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, watching him in front of the net, I would see it every day at practice, and the little touches and the little things that he would do. He had such a good sense of just being able to score. There are just guys who seem to always find that way, and when they're in front of the net, they're always in the right spot. Their stick's always in the right place. It was truly he had that sense and that ability. And I think Florida with the goalie, they already had an extra goalie anyway because they had Spencer Knight still at the time. So that was the easiest decision in the world for them to make a trade like that. And again, Zito has fleeced quite a few people up until this point, and that is why we're talking about Florida the way we are. All right, well, the last time, it's been 16 years since we saw two teams, the same two, facing off in a Stanley Cup final, a rematch. The last one I remember well, I was still in Pittsburgh at the time, where Detroit beat the Penguins in 2008, and then 2009, the Penguins got their redemption and raised the cup. And I think we hear this a lot in all sports, but hockey in particular, that you have to suffer that heartbreak and know that pain of losing before you are ready to take that step and win. So, Bruce, do you believe in this at all, or is there some advantage to what Edmonton suffered last year? Is there some experience they gained from last year that is going to have them better equipped to flip the script and win this year?
I absolutely do, but let me digress here. Pittsburgh shouldn't have been in the finals 2 years in a row. They shouldn't have beat the Washington Capitals the first year, but I mean, I'm just saying that just to get it out and let me breathe. Let me breathe.
Take your moment.
Those emotional scars don't heal fast, Katie.
No, they don't. They come back. When you hear it, you go, "Oh man, I can't believe Game 7." Anyway,
I covered that series. I remember it. No, I know.
I think I was talking to somebody, we were going over it last week or something, and I said, we should have won the first 5 games, but then we should have lost the last 2. But I mean, you go over those things in your mind your whole life. There's just no way around it here. But anyway, what are we talking about now?
How Connor McDavid saying we should have won one of the first 3 games last year, and we would have been in a better spot probably last year.
Well, I think you learn a lot by losing in the finals. I mean, you learn that you want to get there again. You learn that the heartbreak that is there, and you learn what it takes to get there. All different, all really tough things to do, but you're not going to learn them unless you've been there. And you look at Florida, who would have had a better chance against Vegas, but as we remember, everybody was hurt on that team. I mean, if they had been everybody healthy at that time, I think they would have given Vegas a really good run for their money that year. But and Edmonton's the same way. By losing, I think they're better equipped. I think the biggest difference between this year and last year is maybe home ice advantage goes to Edmonton. Yeah. I mean, the team seems so close to me. Yeah. I think that could be a difference. And if they do get if it is a matchup game and they do get the matchups they want, then they've got that extra home ice advantage thing. But I mean, and I think, didn't Tampa lose in the finals before they won 2, or was it?
They lost to Chicago.
Yeah.
And then they won later on when they in the bubble.
By the way, Chicago shouldn't have been in the finals that year either. Just want to let you know.
You remember that was the year where Ben Bishop.
You guys are killing me. Yeah,
I know. What are we doing to this man? I'm sorry, Bruce. I'm sorry. We're just bringing up too much history, but you have such a great perspective that it is so interesting.
No, it's great. Like, no, I'm just teasing, but I mean, like I just think like I've been in the finals as a player in the minors and that. And then you become better equipped to win the following year. I just think it's human nature. You get there and you're more determined the second year because you don't want it to happen again. You don't want to be the lovable loser. You want to get over that hump. I mean, let alone all the pressure that all of Canada is saying we haven't won since '93. Haven't had a team win since we got to win a Stanley Cup at some point, and I think that there's going to be pressure to do that, but there's going to be a will and a want to get it done. And I think Edmonton will pay whether they're good enough or not, I don't know, but I think they will pay any price to get to that spot. And I mean, I think one of the rallying cries in there for sure is not the Connor McDavid's or Leon Draisaitl winning their first. I think it'll be going for Corey Perry on his 7th try. He's only won 1, but I mean, I think as a 40-year-old, he's going to be the guy that the players are going to sit there and say, we want to win it for him. And I mean, every team has one of those things. Yeah. And I think I think Corey Perry's going to be Edmonton's guy that they want to really win it for.
That's a really good point. You know, in the last year, the way it looked in the first 3 games, at least for Edmonton, was the Oilers were just happy to be there. They were finally like, we made it to the Cup final. All right, this is the first step. Maybe, you know, we'll win, maybe we won't, but we're just happy to be here. Now I get the sense that, you know, they're here for one point only, is to win the Cup. And, you know, I covered that Ovechkin first win in, what was that, 2018 over Vegas. That was a team that was not enjoying the festivities in Vegas. They were inside. They were all business. They weren't even joking around with the media. It was just, we came here for one thing only, is to win the championship. After that, we'll have our fun. I bet you the Edmonton Oilers are going to treat it the same way. Last year left such a bitter taste just for the fact that they went down 0-3. Had they just even squeaked out one win in those first 3 games, totally different series. But, you know, I expect Edmonton to come out flying, completely different series. I know we're getting through our predictions later, but, you know, I'm looking forward to a completely different flavor to this final.
Yeah, I mean, you heard the clip from last year's playoffs, the final game where McDavid just went crazy in the locker room. That emotion and that intensity, I have a feeling that's going to be there from game 1. They are absolutely not taking any chances with this. They do not want to feel what they felt last year again. All right, let's get into it then before we switch over to a coach's corner to get some thoughts from Bruce on a few other topics. Stanley Cup final predictions. How many games and who wins? Bruce, we'll put you on the spot to start us off.
Well, you know, I've always, like I predicted Florida from the beginning. I mean, it would be crazy for me to change right now. I just think, I think Edmonton is going to give one hell of a fight, but I still think Florida is going to win. And I think it's going to go 7 games. And, you know, and to your point, what you just finished saying is that, I mean, getting the lead is going to be so important. I mean, you saw what happened when Edmonton's got the lead. The last 3 games against Dallas, they allowed 4 shots on goal each game in the third period. Like, I mean, that's the ability to shut it down. So if they get the lead, it'll be a little bit more difficult because I think Florida's got a little bit more pressure that they can apply. But if Edmonton can get the lead, they'll have a chance. But I just think Florida is not going to stop until they beat you down. And I don't care. They don't care if they have to get dirty, if they have to get into the, like when they get behind, they're like the old Flyers. They'd start to hack and whack you. Let's play 4-on-4. Let's see how tough you want to play. And so I think it's just going to be a great series.
But I'm going the other way. Yeah, I think it's going 7. I think this is Connor McDavid's time. You know, Edmonton in 7. I just feel like McDavid understands what's at stake here. You know, he knows Crosby's won a cup. He knows Ovechkin's won a cup. You know, we all know how many cups Gretzky's won. And I think this is his chance to kind of put his stamp on his career, on his legacy, go down with some of the greatest players ever. And to do that, I think you have to win a championship. So, yeah, I'm saying 7, but I wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton actually finished this off in 5 or 6, just because, you know, I just see a guy in 97 who just looks possessed right now in a good way.
All right, well, there it is. We've got our predictions. I'm also rolling with the Florida Panthers. Maybe it's the little personal bias I have from having worked there for a while, but truthfully, all things aside, I think everything is clicking for them. The way they play, their style, their hunger. You know, any other team, maybe you'd say, oh, they've already won and it doesn't matter as much. I don't feel like that at all with this Panthers team, knowing what's being said in that room and what these leaders are like. So I'm going to go with Panthers. And I think 7 games. I hope 7 games. I think we all want as much of a Stanley Cup final as we can get. So we shall see what happens. All right. Well, I want to switch gears, Bruce, and ask you a little bit about some coaching things. In particular, how coaching can be involved in a series. I think sometimes people get a little caught up in the fact that coaches are controlling things, but there are certain examples where a coach really can have a big impact on what happens on the ice. And one of those was on full display when we saw what happened with Dallas and with Peter DeBoer pulling Jake Ottinger. So I guess from your perspective, how much, you know, does coaching truly come into play throughout a series? And what kind of was your sort of thoughts on, I guess, everything that went down with that game between Dallas and Edmonton?
Well, first of all, like, I mean, the players have got to play the game. That's the one thing.
Right.
You've taken 7 months or 8 months now, putting everything into play, and then they've got to play the game. But I think that the coach has got a lot more effect on the game than people think. Just being behind the bench and in the locker room, I think behind the bench in controlling your emotions. I always used to get there, like at the beginning of my tenure as a coach, I'd get really emotional and start screaming at refs and everything else. But when I found out you do that, the players start screaming at refs and everything else. They take your lead on an awful lot of things. So, I mean, you've got to stay in control, and you've got to, you know, if you're doing matchups, I mean, the year against Chicago, I mean, in Game 7 in 2015, I went away from the matchup in the first period. Jonathan Toews scored, and all of a sudden we lost. The players were looking at you and going, okay, why did we do that type thing? So the coach has an awful lot of effect on the game, especially if you've built over time the trust between you and the players. What you say is going to have a big outcome on how they react to it. Like if you go in there and you're adamant and you're saying, boys, believe me when I say this, if we play this way, we're going to win. And I mean, if they have got trust in you as a coach and the knowledge you have, you're going to play a big part in that winning or losing, no matter how good the team is, no matter how everything else is. As far as the Dallas game, I like Pete DeBoer, but he screwed up. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. Like, I mean, you know, like, I mean, I understand Ottinger didn't make a save in the first two. I understand that he's struggled against Edmonton. But if you want to call a timeout, and when he did it at the time, I said, great move. Let's settle your team down. You still got 55 minutes, but you don't call a timeout and pull the goalie. You do one of the two. Like, I mean, you're already settling down. The goalie might have needed settling down too. But, and then if they scored a minute later, then you can pull them. But I mean, by doing both, you wasted both your bullets on the same play. And so, I mean, you got no bullets left in the chamber. Like, I mean, and you sort of left it. Like, I mean, Ottinger didn't know. And I think for the next 5 minutes of the game, if you watch that, I think the whole Dallas bench was sort of like, what's going on here? They scored a minute later and they were rattled until they settled down. And at the end of the period, got a goal. They calmed down, got another one, but they couldn't. I don't think Casey DeSmith was, or any goalie maybe, would have been able to stop them at that time. But you know, and then to say the things that Pete said after, I mean, really were the more. He was trying to defend his move, which was really indefensible, and then throwing Ottinger under the bus. And then within the next couple of days, he's trying to pull it back and give. And I'm going, boy, you're going like this. I'm just going, just shut up and don't talk to anybody for a while, you know. So I mean, that happens. Coaches get emotional too. I just think he got emotional at the wrong time. Knowing that this was going to be maybe the final game, and and I think for the first time in his long, illustrious coaching career, he panicked a little bit behind the bench, and that caused that outcome.
Yeah, I really like Pete DeBoer. I love Steve Spott. I think that's great coaching tandem. But I'm with you, Bruce. I'd be surprised. He's got one more year left on his contract. I'd be surprised if Dallas brings him back. But that being said, I'd also be surprised if he's not coaching in the NHL next season, because I know how respected he is. So, you know, to Bruce's point, Katie, in the Stanley Cup final, you don't want to be the reason your team didn't win a game or didn't win the series. I think sometimes the best coaches are ones we look back on saying, I didn't notice what they did on the bench a whole lot because they didn't make that mistake. They let the other coach make the mistake and they got out coached maybe just by, you know, galaxy braining a couple of decisions. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. Paul Maurice, you know, he knows how to pull, you know, he knows how to push buttons and pull strings better than anyone, especially he knows how to work the media. With Chris Knobloch, it's a little quieter. I don't think he's going to try to reinvent the wheel in this series. So, you know, again, to Bruce's point, I think it's going to come down to the players.
All right, well, let's talk about one more head coach in a different team that is not a part of this playoffs, but someone that's very interesting and will be a topic for next season for sure. And that's Adam Foote, first-time head coach in the NHL in Vancouver. And Bruce, I just want to get your thoughts on, what are the challenges of going from, an assistant coach or an associate coach to a head coach? And what are maybe some of the expectations that you think will be his main focus, or how he approaches his first season as the bench boss with the Canucks?
Well, I give you the reason why it doesn't work a lot of times. And that reason to me is pretty simple. The head coach is like the father, the guy that's the disciplinarian. He does all the things. The assistant coach is the guy that the players all come to and ask questions, and they got to put your arm around him and say, hey, listen, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And he'll take it to the head coach and say, I think you got to talk to this guy. So now all of a sudden you change the rule, and you got to be the and you got to be the guy that comes down with the hammer. So all of a sudden you say, hey, last year you said I was doing this right. Now all of a sudden I can't do it right. So that's the problem. The one thing Adam's got going for him is he was 20 years in the NHL and such. So he knows the landscape. But being a first-time coach in Vancouver is not going to be anybody's easy task, especially you don't know what they're doing with Pius Suter. You don't know what they're doing with Brock Besser. You don't know what they're doing with Quinn Hughes. Jim has already come out and said he wants to play with his brothers. So what are you going to do? Let him go 2 years and then let him go? No. If that's going to be the case, you better find a place to trade him. And sure. you need to, if you're going to trade Quinn Hughes, you better get a whole team back because he's that good. So, he's coming into quite a storm, I think, and I know guys that have interviewed there for assistants, and they've texted me and they said, wow, is that that's something going in there? So, hey, to me, if Adam Foote can get that team in the playoffs with what they've got and getting Elias Pettersson back on track and such, and getting Connor Garland to keep playing the way he's playing, I'm giving him Coach of the Year right now because there's no doubt. That's something that there's more things going on in Vancouver than any other team. And I look at that team 2 years ago or 3 years ago, what we were potentially on the verge of doing, and talking about throwing a bomb into the middle of something and watching it blow up. I think that's what we've seen. And we don't even know what Demko's situation is yet either. So that's another one. So
yeah, I think after last year, they need that fun uncle to kind of go with Bruce's analogy there. They don't need the disciplinarian head coach like a Babcock or someone of that ilk. They need someone who's going to bring some positivity, who Quinn Hughes has a decent relationship with. Yeah. So I agree with Bruce. I think Foote, he's got his hands full, but if he can kind of make it work and at least get guys smiling at the rink, because what a disaster and what a miserable year it was on and off the ice with all the drama, then for sure, give him the Jack Adams right now.
Yeah, just keep Jimmy away from the arena and everything will be fine. I know that.
That's great. All right. Well, Footer's got his work cut out for him, but if there's anybody that can at least get the vibes going in a little bit of a better direction, I do believe he's a good guy for that job. Let's switch gears now and head into our final segment, our rapid fire. So, Bruce, we keep our answers a little briefer, although we tried it talk for a minute, and it's just never enough time. But we're going to dive into one topic that I think everyone that's come on this show has gotten their chance to discuss, and it's going to be the biggest story all the way up until July 1, potentially. Where will Mitch Marner end up?
You know what? I don't know. There's 30 other teams that want him, 31. But if I was Chicago and I was an original six, and I wanted to get back where it was only 10 years ago that we were winning cups left, right, and center, I'd want somebody to play with Connor Bedard, because you're losing him as a potential franchise player and everything, unless you get somebody to play that can play with him. Mitch Marner's played with Austin Matthews. I would like to see him there, and that would make that team an awful lot better and make Bedard an awful lot better player.
Yeah, I think if I'm Mitch Marner, I don't want to go to a big market, but I want to go to a market where I know winning is at the top of their list. So I'm going Vegas. I don't know how it's going to work contractually, but Kelly McCrimmon has managed to.
They find ways. They find ways.
Yeah, he finds ways. So I'm saying Mitch is going to be a Golden Knight. He'll be on a line with Jack Eichel next year.
All right. Well, we'll see what moves they make. It's still going to be It's going to be talked to death by the time we finally get there. We'll see what happens with Mitch Marner and the future of Toronto as a whole, because that's a whole nother story. All right, Bruce, as a coach, did you ever have any superstitions or anything that you believed in, or did it maybe just during the playoffs, anything that stands out?
I did I'm the most superstitious guy in the world. I mean, from a player to a coach, like a player or as a coach, I had to leave the room at the exact same time all the time. I had to make my speeches exactly the same length. I had to go behind somebody. You know how the last guy comes on the ice and goes off the ice? I had that as well. But more importantly, if we won, I wore the same tie all the time, to the point where in the American League, when we won the Calder Cup, they took my tie after the game and they framed it and gave it back to me in a frame. And it must have had more ketchup on it than you can shake a stick at. But I was wearing this thing no matter how dirty it was. And but I mean, all of those things, from the length of your nap to what you ate. I think I ate the same meal every time we were winning. I always had the same meal. So I mean, all of those things were, to me, had to be exactly duplicated if we were winning.
Michael, do you have any when you're watching the team you root for?
I don't have any superstitions when watching team. My favorite superstition came from Mikhail Grabovski, who told me that if he was in a slump, the way out of it, he said, was do the Russian method. And I said, what was the Russian method? And he says, well, you urinate on your hockey stick and then you wipe it clean. So I don't know if that's true or if he was just messing with you, because Grabovski was a funny character. But I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, Bruce. You scored a lot of goals in your career. I don't know if you've ever had the resort on wiping it clean.
No, I think I bypass that one. But I will tell you one, if you got 2 minutes, is when I was in junior, George Armstrong, famous coach, he would tell us a story about superstitions. And he'd say, I knew a player when I played with that was in a horrible slump. And then he went out and got drunk the night before. And he came back, he scored 3 goals. And he said that ended his slump. Well, he, again, a couple months later, he's in another terrible slump. What's he do? He goes out the night before a game and gets drunk again, comes back and scores 2 goals. And then he looked at us as players. He says, you know what happened to him? And we all said, what? And he said, he was out of hockey in a year and a half. So, I mean, like, he was trying to tell us that story of, hey, the night before a game, you mind your P's and Q's and you do what you're supposed to be doing, rather than this opposite thing. But it's something that the players, when you're 19, you're looking at him and you're just believing everything he said. And it was a great story.
That's a great way to keep your teenage junior hockey players in line too, because Lord knows that some of those guys can find their ways into trouble, but not if the coach tells you a story like that. All right, Bruce, I got 2 more for you. The first one, we've heard that when you played, you would like to volunteer to serve the bench minor penalties when you were with the Maple Leafs. Can you tell us a little bit about why?
Well, because I knew I wasn't going to kill the penalty, and I knew I was going to sit on the bench all night long anyway. So at least give me a chance to come out of the penalty box and maybe sneak a breakaway or something. The worst thing that could happen is the whistle goes off at the 2-minute mark of once the penalty was over, and then you just had to come out of the box and go straight to the bench. So I wanted every bit of ice time that I could get because I didn't play a lot. So that was one way to get a little bit of ice time in.
That is a smart tactic, and one that the Toronto Maple Leafs used to employ a lot with William Nylander. He served a lot of bench minors because of that, and for the simple fact that who else would you want on the ice if there's a breakaway situation coming out of the box?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I like it. All right, last one. The plumber line you were a part of. Where does that rank in the all-time great line names?
The plumber line. That's you're digging into the past there.
Gotta have some fun.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know how it got started or how it even ended up, but as far as a name, I mean, you take pride anytime that there's a line that they call anything,
Yeah.
because I mean, so a plumber line, you took pride that, yeah, we're the guys going out there doing all the dirty work and the grunge work and everything else. You take that and you embrace it, and like, I mean, it's sort of if you say it individually, it sounds like, I mean, oh, they're saying something derogatory, but when you use it in that phrase, it's something that you take a lot of pride in, and we all did. I mean, and if we were had a name that was whether it was like, for example, Brad Marchand is the Rat, and so they're shooting rats at him after a game. You take pride in that thing. That's something that you relish, and I mean, we did the same thing.
Yeah, a bit of a rat pack there in Florida, right?
Yeah.
It is. The way they play, the actual Rat history that goes back all the way to the very first season. Just another thing that they are fully leaning into. All right, that does it. Before we go, just a great reminder that the Hockey News Big Show is presented by Sticks.com. You don't need to spend a fortune on sticks when you can get a pro-level composite stick at Sticks.com without that crazy pro price tag. So that's Stix.com. Make sure you go and check it out. That does it, Bruce. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss all things Stanley Cup final between Florida and Edmonton, and for going down memory lane a little bit with us, talking about the past and having some fun. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. That does it. We will see you guys all after every single game on the Playoff Frenzy live. For Michael Traikos and Bruce Boudreau, I'm Katie Gaus. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all next time.